Welcome to the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. Before we dive in, I wanted to note that as a health and wellness coach, I can support you in making sustainable lifestyle changes, tuning into your own wisdom, and building habits that align with your values and vision for your well being. I don't prescribe or treat health conditions, as I'm not a doctor or a mental health professional. Instead, I can walk alongside you as you create a healthier life on your terms. From time to time, I share conversations with guests. The views and opinions expressed by those guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect my views or those of anyone associated with wellness in a chaotic world. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always talk to your doctor or qualified mental health provider about any physical or mental health concerns. This is the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast, a place where we're having conversations about what it really takes to live well in our unhealthy, chaotic world. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. If you're beating yourself up over a bag of chips you ate in a stressed out frenzy, or you can't figure out how anyone manages to find the time to even think about wellness, you're in the right place. We talk about all of these things and more because, frankly, we don't talk to each other enough about what we're really up against every day. Let's change that right now. My guest this week is Jen Yundt Coles, the SIBO Coach. Jen is an AFMC certified functional medicine and integrative nutrition health coach and the creator of the Hydrogen Sulfide Solutions program. We're going to get into this during the episode, so I think we'll just get into it and talk about what is SIBO and what should people be looking for.
Yeah. So are we ready to just dive in?
Yeah, let's do
All right, let's do
it.
it. Okay, so yeah, I'm Jen and I'm a functional medicine and integrative health coach. And I also spent decades and decades with SIBO, and most of that was unknowingly, right? So SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it's essentially when you have too much bacteria that shouldn't be located in the small intestine, and that starts to wreak havoc. It causes inflammation, leaky gut, malabsorption of nutrients, and all sorts of downstream effects, right? So we don't want that happening, especially long term. And unfortunately, we know through recent studies that, well, there's kind of a range, but some of the recent studies show that anywhere from between 60 to 80% of IBS sufferers, folks who get that kind of blanket. I also do a lot of quotes here. I don't know if your audience can see me, but I do a lot of air quotes. A lot of it's a vague diagnosis, IBS, right? Irritable bowel syndrome, but 60 to 80% of that is purported to possibly be rooted in SIBO, right? So really need to get to the root cause of why you have SIBO so that you can take care of some of those things. And SIBO additionally is also part of this whole co-infection picture, right? So maybe you have parasites too, or candida overgrowth, maybe viral load in the intestinal tract. I know I'm seeing a lot more post-COVID clients in my practice because the virus wreaks havoc on your epithelial layer, and then can cause an imbalance there. So there are many root causes for SIBO, many possible root causes, and then all sorts of symptoms. We can certainly dive into that if you want. And then some common downstream effects of maybe not addressing it and letting it ride, right? So we can talk about how that affects your life and then just causes chaos both inside and outside of your life, right?
Yeah, so you have a personal story that's connected to this. There's a reason you became the SIBO coach. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I tell this story to my clients a lot and on social media, but basically, I was the kid that was in the nurse's office all the time. I had a stomach ache pretty much my entire childhood. I was constipated. If I traveled anywhere, it was just craziness, right? My poor parents just didn't know how to help me. And then that continued on through my teenage years. I was kind of living on Mylanta and ibuprofen, which probably was not making things any better, as you know. And, on to getting married and not wanting to poop in the house when my husband was home and just like causing other issues there, right?
Yeah.
I did eventually find out that I react to a specific wheat protein. It's not gluten, but it's one of the other ones. And so I was having an antibody reaction to that and when I was consuming it. And so that was good to find out. I also figured out that I was lactose intolerant. So once I figured that part out as well, that did give me some relief. But once I had children, I was in a car accident as well, all sorts of other things going on in my life that were affecting my overall health, also affecting my gut. And I'm sure those things were also downstream effects of not addressing what was going on with my gut, right? That went on for many, many years, really struggling with chronic constipation. And it really took a toll on my sense of like freedom and, ability to live spontaneously and things like that, right? And then, um, after my car accident, I dove into the world of alternative medicine for pain relief. And that's my first taste of Chinese medicine and acupressure. So I'm actually certified in that as well now. Um, and that was really helpful too, but I just kind of felt like maybe I needed more information. None of my doctors were able to help me. They would just say, take probiotics and take fiber, and that kind of made things worse for me.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I'm also a really wound type perfectionist. I'm going to say recovering perfectionist rather, because that's something I've been working on a lot. And I think that also plays into that whole gut brain axis, right? So we can talk about that too. But I wanted to get to this part. So eventually, that high stress lifestyle, that go, go, go all the time, raising kids, being a mom, all the things, having the physiological stressor of this overgrowth that I didn't know about, um, finally led me to broken heart syndrome. I had a heart event and I was quite young, so it was quite a shock. My body was like, hey, Jen, we're done, right? And suddenly my digestive tract switched to chronic diarrhea. And I did not know what was going on because I was like, this is a whole new world, right? And then I went to my first functional medicine practitioner. And so she's the one that actually said, hey, why don't we test you for SIBO? And I had never even heard of it. And so that's kind of where my journey into the SIBO world began. We treated with some herbal antimicrobials for a few months. And then, honestly, I felt great, but for like 2 weeks. And then my body shifted into the third type of SIBO, which is less studied and understood, which is not ironically, but like, how the universe works, but that's actually my specialty now because that was the thing I had to figure out because no one else was able to help me. It's called hydrogen sulfide SIBO. It actually has a new name. It's called intestinal sulfide overproduction. It's kind of a boring name. Um, but anyway, so that kind of just led me down to years and years of research. I had severe nutrient depletion. I was weak. I couldn't do activities with my kids. I thought, this is it for me. I have to figure this out. And I had that little tiny seed of hope still that I could figure it out. And I put myself through functional medicine school, and that is where everything transformed for me. And so word got out that I was helping my own health coaching clients with their SIBO. And so I decided eventually to rebrand as the SIBO coach. But I do help with all types of digestive issues, but specifically SIBO, and even further niche down from that is hydrogen sulfide SIBO. So that's the story. And here I am, SIBO free and helping my clients.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it seems like you hear about SIBO in the functional medicine community a lot, but it really hasn't reached the wider population, and, conventional doctors don't really talk about it. They don't really address that
Yeah.
level. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's really interesting. In the functional medicine world, we like to say it takes about 10 years for the conventional world to catch up to what we're doing. I don't know. That's probably not very nice to say, but it takes them a lot of time because they're also doing individual, their research and all of this kind of stuff. And then it has to get put into the vernacular and the studies in the medical school and all of that. So it kind of has to catch up and it takes a lot of time, right? So yes, I would say generally the majority of my clients come to me frustrated because their GIs or their PCPs are unaware of SIBO and or They know enough to get a test and they know enough to prescribe 2 weeks of rifaximin, but they don't know enough to have a really comprehensive approach. And that's really what's missing. And that's such a disservice to their patients. It's not their fault. They're just not educated to know what to do, right? Something that I do in my practice is it's, like I said, it needs to be a comprehensive whole body, mind, soul approach because we are not just our small intestine, right? We are an entire being with experiences in different environments and history and all of that. So that plays a role in our gut health as well. And I think that's the big part that's missing. Hopefully, they're starting to catch up. I mean, I hear more and more from clients as well saying, well, my doctor did ask me maybe we should test for SIBO. And I'm like, okay, well, we're headed in the right direction because at least they've heard of it, right?
Right, right,
But that's also part of just like my mission as the SIBO coach, right? Is educating. Really a big part of my whole scene over here is just to educate. Yeah.
right. Now, speaking of educating, there's probably a lot of different reasons people can end up with this diagnosis of having SIBO. What are some of the common causes?
Yeah. So common causes, get ready for this. There's a lot. One of the top ones is food poisoning, actually. So about a food poisoning, and then you took your Pepto and you laid in bed for a few days, but all of a sudden 3 months later, you're like, oh my gosh, what's up with my gut? Why am I constantly bloated after I eat? Why do I look like I'm 6 months pregnant? Why are all of a sudden my bowels so unpredictable? Things like that. That's usually a good chance that the food poisoning was the culprit there. Antibiotic use in general, right? So that is dysregulating or causing an imbalance in our microbiome. And that could be a root cause as well. So even things like we don't think that we're using on a daily basis, painkillers or muscle relaxers slow the migrating motor complex, which could cause that bacteria to be migrating up from the large intestine up to the small intestine. PPI use is rampant in this country, right? The reality is the majority of us on a PPI, for those of you who are taking PPIs, it's not a situation of too much stomach acid. It's just stomach acid in the wrong place. So get to the root cause of that question, right? Um, but PPI is impairing your stomach acid production, which is your first line of defense when you're consuming foods, right? But also helps you have a downstream signaling of different digestive secretions like bile and digestive enzymes, which are also imperative for keeping things like SIBO at bay. Even birth control pills, women don't realize this, but this can dysregulate your serotonin in the body, and that serotonin is needed to regulate the migrating motor complex. So sometimes we'll see a shift in bowels when someone has been on birth control pills for a long time. Surgeries, right? Lots of folks coming in with SIBO who had their gallbladder taken out, and the poor gallbladder was the victim of the liver because the doctor didn't go upstream to find out what was going on with the liver, right? So it's a lot of detective work when you're in this field and just being mindful of like the complexity of everything in the digestive tract. It's not just one organ. They all need to be working well together and being friendly, right? Even things like having a root canal, like oral and nasal bacterial infections. If you have chronic sinusitis, you may have something like SIBO too, right?
Hmm.
Um, Having an impaired migrating motor complex, like I said, can be caused even just by having chronic stressful lifestyle or being exposed to toxins in our crazy world, or having heavy metals or pesticides built up. Mold exposure is a really popular one in my practice. I see mold exposure as a root cause very often because it creates an extremely advanced biofilm layer. It's a thick matrix of all sorts of things hanging out in there. It could be parasites and viruses and bacteria. Stress and heart conditions, right? Emotional trauma. Interestingly, in Chinese medicine, they teach that the energetic meridians of the heart and the small intestine are intimately connected, which I think is so interesting, especially as someone who had broken heart syndrome. Really interesting emotional connection there that I find is really important for people to explore, in addition to like, what am I eating? Oh, what's this bacterial strain I have? Um, looking outside of the box, really. And other things like celiac, or food intolerance, continuing to eat foods that you're intolerant of, like, you're not supposed to eat the super nachos, but you do anyway.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That can cause inflammation, leaky gut, and, intestinal microbial imbalances. So again, there are so many reasons. I could probably talk about more, but those are probably the more common ones. Yeah.
Interesting. I would say like I have an intolerance. I don't know for sure because I haven't completed the testing, but I did an elimination diet myself
Uh-huh.
to find out what was causing my, acid reflux and bloating and just feeling nauseous after eating. And
Yeah.
it turned out it was milk products.
Yeah,
So,
very common.
and now do I know exactly what it is about those milk products? No, I don't know if it's lactose. I don't know if it's the protein. I, but I just know that I'm not doing that anymore, right? So that's
Yeah.
the stage that I've gotten to.
Yeah.
um,
That's great. That's great. You're investigating and asking more questions.
and I
Yeah,
think
for
that's really
sure.
important just to, it's like self-advocacy is huge. And I feel like when people go to a traditional doctor, they're not necessarily always advocating for themselves in a way that they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen to that. And I 100% agree. I always tell my clients, you are your own best advocate. You are the only one that knows your body, and you are the only one that's going to be able to heal yourself. You can't expect anyone else to fix you, right? I
Right.
mean, obviously, conventional medicine has its place. It can be life-saving, and it saved my life on a number of occasions, right? But in the context of chronic digestive disorders, I would say, this is my opinion, obviously, that it is a little bit short-sighted. And they're not really understanding how things can be connected. So, also, one of the things I meant to mention, common root causes for SIBO are things like hypothyroid dynamics, right? This is a really common one among women, especially, and goes undiagnosed or underdiagnosed. And we like to say in the functional medicine world, if you have a sluggish thyroid function, right, or conversion of hormone inside the liver, from T4 to T3, if you have sluggish thyroid, you could have sluggish anything else. That could be sluggish digestion, sluggish cognition, sluggish sex hormone production, and on, right? And so it's really important to kind of look upstream when you're talking about gut issues, right? It's really interesting too, because when you're talking about symptoms, you always want to look at, well, what's going on in your gut? Could be rashes, could be brain fog, could be poor sleep, could be low energy. I mean, the list goes on, right? So, for instance, I'll just share this really quickly. I have a client who came to me for migraines, right? But no digestive issues. Upon further investigation, this client had SIBO. And so once we cleared the SIBO, the migraines were going away. So it's important to kind of look at the whole picture.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask you about that I saw on your social media, your Instagram account, was a mention of fibromyalgia symptoms.
Yes, body pain syndromes are big. And this is because when you have some sort of ongoing simmering infection like SIBO, that is again impairing your ability to absorb your key nutrients, right? So you need minerals, you need vitamins, and all of these things for cellular activity. And one of those things would be something like magnesium, like your minerals really get out of whack, right? And especially if you also have low stomach acid, like if you're one of those PPI people who are purposely suppressing your stomach acid, you're not going to be able to break down and absorb those important nutrients that you need. And so that ends up looking like muscle fatigue, muscle twitches, arthritis, joint pain. I know you mentioned that in your history as well. So that's definitely something I see in my practice. The other thing, too, that you need to be mindful of is that when you have had this ongoing inflammation and infection in the intestinal tract, you're likely impairing your uh, tight junctions. Those are what are in the intestinal lining that kind of allow digested nutrients to go into the bloodstream from the small intestine. And those junctions kind of get impaired or damaged. It's kind of like the toll booth, right? So then undigested proteins and things like that are getting into the bloodstream, and then that causes an immune reaction because your immune system is like, wait, what's up? That's not supposed to be here, right? So then your body decides what body part it wants to attack, right? In its attempt to protect you, right? And then you have developed some sort of autoimmunity, and that can look like body pain syndromes as well. So it's all very connected. Yeah. Great question. Yeah, so I'm curious, like when you cut out the dairy, did you see an improvement in your joint pain?
Oh yeah, almost
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah, I see
Um,
that too.
yeah, absolutely. Just the joint pain, the waking up with inflammation. And it's those kinds of symptoms that are frustrating because there's like no obvious answer for them, or the answer is something you're being told, well, you're going to have arthritis. It runs in your family. And I'm thinking, but not, I don't think that's it. There's something
Yeah.
else here. There's like
Yes.
some kernel that isn't being seen yet.
Hmm. Yeah, and
And
that goes back to what you were saying about being your own advocate and listening to your intuition and knowing your body and what you need, right? Like if you're not getting the answers from your doctor, find another doctor. Keep asking questions, right?
yeah, right. Right. And it's interesting too, because when you do try to work with like a gastroenterologist, and in my experience, the answer was, well, you're just taking your omeprazole wrong. And
Right.
like it's just like, oh well, okay, but what I don't want to do is take omeprazole if I don't need to be taking it. I don't want to
Exactly.
be on these drugs for the rest of my life when I should be looking for the root cause of what's troubling me.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, generally speaking, a conventional medicine trained doctor goes to school. They have literally just a handful of hours of training on nutrition, if that, right? So, I want to say it's not their fault, right? Like I've heard people say they went to their GI and their GI gave them antibiotics for their SIBO and then didn't give them any direction even on their nutrition or lifestyle habits or anything like that that could be at play for them, right? And to your point, um, they're trained in their defense, right? They are trained to list your symptoms and then they categorize that and then they match it to a pharmaceutical because that's how they were trained, right? And so
Mhm.
then you take that pharmaceutical. There's never really any, well, I shouldn't say never, but there's not often a lot of questioning of, well, what is your sleep routine like? Or have you been outside in the sunshine at all lately? Because I know you have an office job. Or, are you eating a food that you're sensitive to? Maybe let's do a food sensitivity test before we put you on this medication. And just kind of being mindful of other things that might be at play. Unfortunately, it gets missed. I mean, you have a 10-minute appointment and you have to blurt out all your things and, so that they know what's going on. And then they quickly give you a prescription and send you on your way. And that's just kind of the program or the system
Mhm.
of, unfortunately, what we live in, right? And so when you do have something chronic going on, it's really important to kind of look outside of the box and find an alternative, in my opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you've gotten some relief. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. Now the trouble is just, not eating those triggers.
Right, right.
Right. Which actually brings me to an interesting question because you talk about how stress plays into this.
Hmm.
And for me, stress plays into like how I am managing my life and not engaging in those things that trigger the issues for me. So how
Yeah.
does stress play into SIBO?
Yeah. So this is actually a shift that I've made in my practice over the last couple of years. And I'm glad you brought this topic up because I love talking about it. And I can speak to it from personal experience because, like I said, serial entrepreneur, go-getter, wound tight, type A perfectionist, constantly doing people pleaser types, right? We get stuck in this fight or flight mode, which is the running from the tiger, right? And when we are in that mode, our brain is sending the message to our body that is not safe to heal because we don't need to prioritize healing when we're running from the tiger, right? Stress is so interesting because I will see folks come in and they say, well, Jen, I don't feel stressed. I really love my life. My family's great. I like my job. And they don't really think about other types of stress, right?
Mhm.
So we have things like environmental stressors. Like I mentioned, are we living in a moldy bedroom and we don't know it and being exposed to that? That's a toxin to our body. Are we consuming pesticides and molds on our produce, right? This is very common. Also, they add fungicides and things like that too, but that can be building an advanced biofilm layer in the intestinal tract. And that in itself is a physiological stressor. So then our gut is sending the signal to our brain, hey, we have an imbalance down here. We're in a fight or flight. Just keep going, right? And no chance to heal. So your body starts tolerating that and your immune system gets dysregulated and all sorts of things. Another thing I like to talk about in my practice is relationships. So this kind of gets missed, but I see this, it's very common, and I can speak to it personally in my own life that relationships can make or break a self-healing journey because of the stress. You may not think that it's stressful, you think that everything is fine, but maybe a conversation didn't sit well with you and you're still ruminating over it. Or you have a coworker whose energy is like invading your energy, right? Like it's causing some sort of like emotional physiological reaction in your body that you're not really registering as stress, but your brain and your body are registering as stress, right? And so being mindful of different types, even as you know, like as women, I think it's insane. I think there's something like a statistic that says on average, we're putting like 40 different products on our body in one day,
Wow.
including makeup and shampoos and deodorants and all the things. Um, and so if those things have endocrine disruptors and toxins in them, you know, phthalates and plastics and other things like that, that is a physiological stressor to our body. And again, that is sending the signal to our brain that we are not safe to heal. And this is why often we see folks who do all the diets, take the supplements, all the things, but they aren't getting well. And it's because they're stuck in fight or flight and not understanding that they need to, one, do some investigating and reducing stress, learning how to manage. I mean, we like to the point of your whole show here, we live in a chaotic world, right? And it's nearly impossible to just check out and not be exposed to any of that, right?
Right.
And so the trick is learning how to manage and incorporating little things every day so that you can reset regularly back into parasympathetic, which is the rest, digest, and heal mode. Did that answer your question?
It did,
Okay.
absolutely. And so in your practice, do you work with people on regularly getting into that parasympathetic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that is actually part of, you know, many of our talks and session together. So yes, we're talking about what's your diet and what's, you know, are you going to bed on time? And, you know, did you take your supplements when you were supposed to? Of course, we talk about all of that. But a big part of the conversation is what else is going on in your life right now, right? Do we need to have a conversation, you know, dive a little bit deeper into some stories or negative self-talk you're telling yourself on a regular basis, and then how can we figure out tiny ways throughout your day to reset, right? So say you have meetings from 9 to 12. Well, at 12, from 12 to 1, let's figure out how you can walk away from your office a little bit, get off your screens, be in nature, go for a short walk. Like for me, I go outside and I play fetch with my dog for a few minutes, or I do qigong to like release the energy because I'm one of those absorbers, you know, like I absorb my clients' energy. Um, Looking out the window even is an easy one. So like if you have a window in your office, just stare out into the distance for a good few minutes. resets and calms your body, right? So little tiny hacks like that. I know for me personally, I'm a big proponent of taking a hot bath at night and Epsom salts. So like I tell my clients, hey, have you tried a bath lately? Some time out, especially like if you're a mom and a working mom, it's just like a ton, right? So you need to have some space and alone time.
Right.
We talk about joy activators. I learned this from one of my mentors, right? She calls them joy activators. It's little tiny things that can help you reset to get back to having some joy. I find that people in my practice who are chronically ill have forgotten all about joy.
Mm.
They don't do their hobbies that they used to love. They aren't connecting with their loved ones as much. They're very isolated and lonely, and frustrated. And so the joy gets lost. And I know for me personally, for many years, I realized now in hindsight, gosh, I was freaking depressed,
Mm.
right? There was no joy going on. So now, I'm a big proponent of, and I encourage my clients all the time, let's get that old guitar out. Let's start playing that again. Or if your favorite thing is watching, your favorite show with your kids at night, or playing, Uno or whatever, right? Over and over. Or even just having a small square of dark chocolate after your dinner, if that brings you joy, right? That's going to reset your parasympathetic, reset you back into parasympathetic dominance. So it's really about the little things. It's like not practical for me to say as a coach, oh, hey, Cheryl, you just need to go on a vacation already. Like, obviously, vacation is nice, but like, we all can't just drop everything and go do that for 2 weeks, right? We need to learn how to implement small things every day to reset, constantly resetting, constantly resetting.
Yeah. I think, I don't know if it's as I've gotten older or just had more experience with this, it really is about those little, tiny little things throughout the day because I don't know, it's just like at a certain point that like 9 to 5 grind, we're just not really meant for that. And we
No.
really do have to insert those moments where we're, like you said, looking out the window, just that can switch off that like stress level for you.
Yeah.
You may have to come
Yeah.
back to it, but like there's those little pieces throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And really understanding how your energy works, right? So some people are just like, they can get up, they're full of energy, their battery is full, and they can burn it until the end of the day. And then they go to bed and they get up and they do it all over again. And some people, they can do that. I'm not one of those people, right? But knowing how your energy works. So like for me, and I use this, I encourage my clients to do this as well, is like figure out your time blocking, right? So like on your calendar, this is going to be my work block. This is what I'm going to do within that block. Or, and this is my buffer block, right? And so this is the time where I'm dealing with all the random little things that are the distractions throughout the day, just like put them in a chunk, right? And then here's my me block, right? And really making that a priority. I think a lot of times we get lost in that idea of, oh, that's selfish, right? To do that, to prioritize, um, going to bed early, or going out for lunch with my friends, or doing something fun that I want to do, or take singing lessons. I just signed up for voice lessons a couple of weeks ago, and I'm so stoked about it. But just like thinking about that has to be on the calendar too, right? If you don't block it off, it's not going to happen, especially for those of us who are so busy with so many things and balls in the air, right? It's really important to block that time off too. You said something and I went on my own tangent here, so it might come back to me and I'll blurt it out.
Well, I think so. Talking about what we were just talking about, blocking it off is a good tactic. There's a deeper level to it though, too, in that you have to be willing to prioritize yourself
hmm
and say, this is actually not selfish.
Yep.
This is something that I need in order to be my best.
And to do all
And
these things on my
mhm,
list, right?
mhm.
Right. And I found too that I don't know if you know about human design, but I've been studying it for the last couple of years, and I'm a projector. And this was huge for me to figure out because this changed everything about how I use my energy to run my business and also to self-heal, right? Um, Knowing that my energy ebbs and flows, that I'm an empath and I absorb, um, that that I need certain boundaries and that I also need to do like some somatics, like which was a great conversation you just had with Lo Bundy on your recent interview. Having some movement in the body to release whatever energy I've absorbed from someone else, right? And understanding those things about yourself on a different level can also help elevate your self-healing journey and help you have more success, right?
Right.
And instead of working against what your body actually needs. And to
Yeah.
your point, yes, you have to make yourself a priority because no one else will.
True. True.
And we have to be able to take care of ourselves first. I like this analogy. I heard this from a friend. She says, you know how we like to say, fill your cup first and all that kind of old adage, right? Well, she says she has a little teacup in her mind. So she says, fill the teacup until it's overflowing and then help others from the saucer, right? The little plate underneath that's, getting the drippings.
Hmm. Hmm.
Give that part away, but keep your teacup full, which I loved the idea of that as a projector, especially how to protect our own energy resources and reserves.
That is awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
I am actually just looking into that because I love the different systems that are out there to just investigate how we operate,
Hmm.
like how do I think, how do I live, how do I feel, how do I engage in the world? And so, I've things like the Enneagram
Yeah.
are very
It's a good
interesting to
one.
me, and um, just your basic personality tests, but I going back to the human design, I have just started learning a little bit about that, and I am a manifesting generator.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
it's just interesting because the thing that I guess I get from that type of a system is I can say to myself, oh, I don't have to beat myself up for the way that I have always operated. It's actually
Yeah.
not wrong. It's just not in accordance with the dominant societal system.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
someone can look at me, manifesting generator, who they like to call multi-passionate, right? You have a lot of interest, your energy goes here, then it goes there. They're kind of connected sometimes.
Yeah. Right.
But, and so like you can look scattered to other people,
Hmm.
but in a way, supposedly, and we'll see if this happens in my life now that I'm embracing it,
Yeah.
you bring those different passions together in a new way. And
Yeah.
it's the way you are is the way you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like for me personally, learning about human design, and I've also seen this as I've shared it with a few of my clients. Not everybody is open to it, and that's fine, right? We're all different. But for those of my clients that are open to it, I see this really interesting thing happen where it's almost like we can take a deep breath and a step back and reflect and give ourselves grace, right? Because like as we were growing up, we were getting this messaging and programming, and it
Hmm.
was against what we really wanted or knew was true for ourselves. So then when we find this out about human design and that, oh, yeah, that's totally how I am, and it really hits and it resonates, it kind of just gives you permission to be your authentic self, which I think is amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that you said that because my two teenagers are manifesting generators. And boy, do they take a lot of energy out of me sometimes. But I love it because it's constant ideas and imagination, and they always want to try new things. And it's fun for me to encourage them and watch them grow and trying new things. And I think even for one of my children, one of the important messages for them was that at 17, it's okay to have a million ideas and want to try them all. And it's okay when you get bored of one and want to try something different. I think this child is going to be the most amazing human. when they're older, because they're going to understand that about themselves, right? And other people, and understanding that there's nothing wrong with them because that's the way they are,
Mhm.
which I love.
I think it helps with relationships, right? You're talking about relationships being one of those things that can be
Oh,
really
yeah.
stressful. But if we
Mhm.
understand each other and we allow each other to be more authentic, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, it opens us up, I think, to being more creative, more productive.
Yeah. Well, being authentic and having
Yeah,
grace and and not like having shame about, you know, what feels good to you about how you're going to live your life when it doesn't measure up to some other person's expectation, right? And living
right.
in alignment and really embodying who you are and living from that place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you discovered that. I'm glad we talked about that.
Yeah, so this isn't really about SIBO, but that's okay because
Oh, but
it's a
really, it kind of
holistic, right?
is. I mean, everything in my mind connects to SIBO, right?
Right. So going back to a little more towards the SIBO, um, if there was something that you would tell a person just starting to just like investigate it for themselves,
Yeah.
what would you tell them?
Yeah. So if they're just like, noticing some symptoms, which we didn't talk about what the common ones were, so I'll just roll down those really quickly, actually. And then if I go on a tangent, remind me what the question was. Common symptoms of SIBO, obviously are the digestive ones at the top of the list. So commonly, you see bloating 30 to 60, even 90 minutes after consuming your meal. That's your food down in the small intestines and fermenting where it's not supposed to be fermenting, right? It's supposed to be doing that in a large colon. Um, Gas, burping, heartburn, flatulence, right? Acid reflux, constipation, diarrhea, or alternating between the two. Those are the top common ones. But like I mentioned before, you can have all sorts of other symptoms that are not digestive related, right? So, anxiety and depression, um, panic attacks, even bladder pain, vulvodynia for women, low libido, headaches, brain fog, loss of, cognition, dizziness, um, general nutrient depletion, right? So if you're getting some lab work done and you're like, oh, my levels are a little low here, right? Like look upstream, what's going on in your digestive tract? Like I mentioned before, hives, rashes, I remember one time I went to my GI and I said, yeah, I noticed I have this crazy rash on my abdomen and I don't know why and I can't get it to go away. And her reaction was, well, you'll have to go down the hall and get a referral for dermatology for that. Like she just had no concept that it could be connected to what was going on in my gut at the time, right? And again, to your point, we were talking about body pain syndromes, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, muscle cramps, restless leg syndrome is a popular one. And that's all because you're not getting the nutrients that you need. And there's so many more symptoms, but those are the ones that I see commonly in my practice. So now I have forgotten what the question was, like I thought I would.
Okay, so let me try to rephrase. So, what is your advice to someone
Oh, yeah.
who wants to investigate this
Yeah,
as
further
maybe a
investigate.
possibility?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so great question. So if you're having any of these symptoms and you're curious, right? Um, you're on Dr. Google and you're kind of wondering, I would make an appointment with my doctor first, right? Just start there. That's kind of my disclaimer. Check with your doctor and all that kind of stuff. But also, I have a free quiz on my website that people can just check out. It's like a questionnaire, and you can kind of gauge what's the likelihood of something like SIBO for you, right? In functional medicine, we like to say test, don't guess. Now, testing and getting these alternative types of tests are often not covered by insurance, but more and more doctors will know how to order a SIBO breath test. And so that's what I would recommend to get some data so that you know what your baseline is. Am I dealing with SIBO or is it something else? Do I have parasites or candida or both, right? And so starting there, getting some information, asking more questions, contacting your doctor, or finding someone like me who, is a practitioner in this area, right? Who has some knowledge. And then going from there, getting a test, getting some more information, and then moving forward, really coming up with a comprehensive plan. And like I mentioned before, the current conventional approach to treating SIBO is 2 weeks of rifaximin. It's an antibiotic purported to stay local in the small intestine and not be systemic. Oftentimes, doctors will combine that antibiotic with a different one, another antibiotic, and that can be a systemic and have other side effects, right? So you have to be careful about that sort of thing. But unfortunately, there's no guidance on how to prepare your gut before you take the antibiotic or follow up afterwards, or things that you can do while you're taking the antibiotic to help it be more effective. So those are some of the things that I do in my practice that are different than the conventional approach. Like I said, everybody needs to find who resonates with them. So, I always tell people who come to me, whether that's me or someone else, just keep asking questions. And again, be your own advocate. Hey, something is up with my gut. Hey, I think I might have low thyroid. Hey, I think I have this rash or this pain in my knee and I don't know where it's coming from. Just keep asking the questions, right? Until you find someone who can help you. And that's probably how I would suggest someone goes about getting to the next step.
That
Yeah.
is, yeah, no, that's good advice. So where can people find you? You have a website?
Yeah. So the easiest place to find me is at the SIBOcoach.com. That's SIBO coach.com. All of my information is there, right? So I'm not a huge salesy person. I don't go out and try to pressure people to sign up or enroll in this or that, but I have programs on there. I have self-paced programs. I even have a mentorship for practitioners who want to learn more about SIBO and helping their clients. And I just opened up my newest program, which is the Hydrogen Sulfide Solutions program. So I've already got a few people enrolling in that as well. And then, I have a ton of free guides on there. I have a guide about doing the elemental diet, which is a drink that you can use to overcome something like SIBO. And there's one on there about peak performance, which might be, a good one for your audience. Those who are looking for how to reduce the stress and the chaos in my life. There's the three, what I call the trifecta in that guide. And again, that's free. So it's all on my website at thesibocoach.com. Yeah. And if anyone downloads one of my guides, I'd love to hear, hey, I heard this on Cheryl's podcast.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for joining me today. This was an awesome conversation.
Yeah, it was fun, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having me. It was good to get to know a little more about you. And I'm glad that you're making and taking steps forward for figuring out what's going on with your health as well. So I love that for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks. So let's talk about a few of the takeaways from today's episode. First, health and wellness require self-advocacy. It's all about being proactive and persistent when it comes to your health. We dive into why it's so important to be self-aware, ask the right questions, and not just accept surface-level answers. So I have a question for you. How often do you advocate for yourself and dig deeper when something doesn't feel right? Second, true health and wellness is holistic. Jen's approach really shows us how everything is connected. Your diet, your lifestyle, sleep, stress, it all matters. Taking care of the whole picture is key to feeling your best. Are there areas of your health that you might be overlooking? And how could focusing on them make a difference for you? And finally, test, don't guess. Getting an accurate diagnosis is essential. So, when was the last time you sought out a precise diagnosis instead of relying on assumptions about your health? I really enjoyed this episode with Jen, and I really hope you did too. Thank you for listening today. If you feel like sharing the answers to these questions, you can always email me at cheryl@wellnessinacchaoticworld.com or DM me on Instagram or Facebook. And if you have a question for the show or you want to be a guest, I would love to connect with you. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. You can also find more about each episode on the website at wellnessinachaoticworld.com. Or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, where we can chat more about living well in this stressed out, chaotic world. And as always, I hope you have a healthy, happy week. If today's episode resonated with you, our private Facebook group is a great place to dive deeper, ask questions, and share wins with people who understand. It's free, it's private, and you can join by clicking the link in the episode description. I hope to see you there.